Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you may be watching one of three channels. That is the Pixel Core channel, the Alex Lindsay channel, or the Office Hours channel. Note that we'll leave it up for a little while on the Pixel Core channel and the Alex Lindsay channel, but this is kind of an introduction. We'll do this every once in a while so that you can see what we're doing. This is kind of the if you're from the older channels, this is the next generation of that. So go ahead and ask your questions. If you don't know how to do that, you can go to officehours.global/join, and you can sign up, and you'll start getting emails. If you want to ask them today, you can just go to askofficehours.global. That is askofficehours.global, and throw them in there, and we'll keep our eye out for them here during the show. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Courtney, what do we have?
First one up is from Brooklyn, New York, and Mike Edwards asks, "Morning, everyone. What does the panel think about Max 9 software by Cycling74, specifically for audio production or creation?" And he has a link to a site.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, a lot of folks, actually including someone from the community, Todd Reynolds, often uses Max, or I think previously it used to be called MSP. It is a nodal-based audio processing engine, and you can do so many things with it. From you can add code into it. You can take in, say, data from different types of sources, from controllers to temperature sensors if you want, and all sorts of different ways to bring in numerals to be able to manipulate audio in however way you want. So a lot of people use it for very, very creative and I guess non-traditional music compositions. So if that's something you want to dive into or play around with, I hear that I don't use it myself, but I hear that Max is a very good tool for that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting tool. It does take some time to get your head around it, and I can't say that I've ever gotten my head fully around it, but I've definitely played with it. And watching Todd use it, you start to realize, oh, this is pretty powerful. So it depends on what you're needing for day-to-day kind of audio production. It's probably not the right tool, but for building something that is going to as an experience, I think it's a pretty powerful piece of software. Next question.
Next one comes in from Austin, Texas. Paul Valhus asks, "The Laowa just launched its third shift lens in the past month, and it's a world-first zooming shift lens. What's its use case?"
Courtney?
Well, shift lenses are used for correcting distortion. This particular one, because he says it's a zoom, but it's really only a 2-to-1 zoom. Here we go. It's a 12-to-24, so it's a 2-to-1 zoom shift lens. And I think it has a constant aperture of 5.6. I don't think the aperture changes. And it's used for correcting distortion. It's used for a couple of things. Correcting distortion. If you're shooting architectural stuff, you can correct the distortion of that wide-angle lens by straightening out the edges of buildings so that they look more parallel or not. It can also be used to generate, if the shift's enough, to generate a very narrow depth of field in a wide-angle lens, which is something you don't normally see, especially with a 5.6 aperture. So it can give you that look like you see in the opening to Colbert or The Tonight Show, I can't remember which one it is, that makes an actual wide-angle shot look like miniatures because it has a very narrow depth of field. So it makes realistic wide-angle shots look like you're shooting miniature people. So it has that curious effect as well.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, this company, and I'm not entirely sure how their name is pronounced, is the same company that put out that probe lens that everyone went crazy for about a decade ago. So it's a relatively affordable probe lens that was a lot more attainable than going to Panavision to use their snorkel or their probe lenses. This is, I believe, the lens that Paul is talking about. For me, it's priced at $700 and knowing how much optics has to go into not only a tilt shift mechanism but also a zoom lens at $700, wouldn't be comfortable or confident in the quality of the optics that it may have at that price. It may be like, if you are just a hobbyist and you want to take architectural photos or landscape photos that may benefit from tilt shift mechanism and also the flexibility that the zoom brings. Perhaps this may be for you, but if you are a professional photographer that needs something, actually, like, pay, have clients that pay for your services, I'd probably stick to the tried and true brands that gives you sharp and high quality optics.
Jesse?
Mickey, to follow up on that, we don't, in our company, we don't look to Laowa for the best lenses. We look to them for interesting lenses that are affordable, and this definitely fits in that category. I do wonder if anyone on the panel has shot shift photography. We've done a little bit, and it never occurred to us to want a zoom. Is there any real need for a zoom? Because typically when we zoom in, that gets rid of the distortion anyway as we tilt up on the tripod or something like that. So it sort of negates the need for the shift function.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd imagine, like, say, for someone who's just casually taking architectural photos, wherein you're shooting in a a street photography style, where you're just walking around, you don't have sticks to line things up, and maybe you don't have all the time or ability to go closer or further away from the building. It may be something useful.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Grant Whitehead in Adelaide, Australia. He says, I saw this very cool large prompter setup. Do you think it could work well for looking at a Zoom active speaker?
Jeffrey?
So, yeah, those prompters are really cool for when you're on stage and you're trying to read whatever text and you don't want to look at the ground too much. I'm not sure how well they would work in a smaller environment. You could definitely probably put a camera behind them and most likely won't see what you're seeing. But a lot of times those prompters are usually set to the side so you can look to the left or the right. Bringing it in front, you would for most teleprompters, you usually have it in an enclosed system, so you don't get any light leaks or any type of bleed through like that. So I'm not exactly sure. Maybe if you're on stage and you're looking at an active speaker, yeah, I suppose. But I think in this case, it would be way too big for like a studio like this.
Courtney?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The thing that they're selling them as is presidential style teleprompters, but they're like super big. And, one of the problems, if they're going to be far away from the speaker, it could help a little bit. But it's more of a problem if you're shooting. I tell you, to get them out of the range of the IMAG cameras. So they're much bigger. They're going to be a much bigger target. And also a lot of things that people don't realize is when you got a big piece of glass like that at a 45-degree angle so that the speaker can see the text on the large prompter that's right below it, it's reflecting to the audience and to the cameras out there that may be shooting the podium. It's reflecting the ceiling where there may be lights hung overhead or, any lights pointing down or lights that are illuminating the podium will be reflected back out to the audience in them. So it's going to be much tougher to get the lights reflected in that big piece of glass out of your shot than possible. Minimally helpful, I would think, unless you have someone with really difficult, poor eyesight that can't see, smaller text that's on a regular presidential prompter.
Yeah, for the way that they're using it, I'll get to what Grant's asking as well, but for the way that they're using it, I think that it's so big, you're still behind it. I would still think that there's a lot of seat kills there or a lot of obstructed views. So you're going to want to put them in the back, and once you put them in the back, you might as well use a monitor. There's not. I don't understand why this would work or why you would use it in an event. Now, as what Grant was asking is looking at Zoom Active Speaker, and we have done ones that are about that size. Now we've just bought silver glass, and we basically, put a big monitor, had C-stands, mounted it so that it, gave it a frame and mounted it and turned it 45 degrees. And we've done it in a fairly small space. The idea was to really give a lifelike size to the person that was standing in front of our subject. and I think it worked really well. It felt very dangerous to move it because it was a huge piece of glass. So we did it for something that we had to do a lot of load in for, and it was so. I've thought about it. I have a larger monitor here that I've been threatening to do that with for this show. But so as something bigger, what's nice about it is you can see a lot more. So you could theoretically have more things on the screen and see them, but the jury's still out on how big you want to go there. But the largest ones I've made are about 70 inches, and again, they just feel like that person is right there if you get it right. But it really is an art project. Like it's not, and remember, you're gonna have to tent that in. If you're going to use it for this, you're going to have to. There's what it's laid out as there, and then you're going to tent the whole thing so that the camera can't see it. Next question.
Another question from down under area from Auckland, New Zealand. Peter Moore asked, Relic'd guitars have divided opinion. Even my 5 solar guitars have some now, albeit Ola has called them Relik based on an old Swedish word. It's R-E-L-I-K, by the way. Thoughts? By the way, the leather seats in this video, does anyone know the brand? And he has a link there.
And I think that with obscure guitar brands, you might be running out of room for our knowledge base. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I think what they're trying to do here is these guitars, they're taking a new guitar and scuffing it up and making it look like Trigger or Willie Nelson, an old Stratocaster. They're carving off, some of the paint and going with vintage pickups and stuff, and so it's making a new guitar look like a vintage guitar, and I guess maybe sound like a vintage guitar. I take it as kind of like the fad of buying new jeans that have been sliced up with razor blades and washed 7,000 times in rocks, and making them look old when they're actually brand new. And it's based on, like he says, a Swedish term, R-E-L-I-K, not R-E-L-I-C. So,
also looking at it, I don't feel like they look like they're wearing and tearing the way that they would wear and tear. Like in the same problem you have with all the ice wash jeans and all the other stuff is that they don't wear, that it doesn't look like you actually use them. And so no. Next question.
Next one comes in from Harlan Williams in Portsmouth, Virginia. He says, imagine a stage where the speaker can be heard clearly without any amplification as long as they stand in a very specific sweet spot. Now consider adding a band. How can I minimize the impact of the effects of the sweet spot in our broadcast mix?
Marty?
So I wish I knew more about the kind of venue that this is in. Is this a concert hall? Is it an outdoor band shell? When I hear this, where is the speaker heard clearly? I mean, if you take a band shell, like in an outdoor venue or something, where the conductor stands, they are supposed to hear an entire orchestra on stage. But that type of curved back wall, a parabolic reflector, if you will, also helps to project the sound out to the audience as well, but should not really affect the sound within the section of the orchestra or the band or the stage. I suppose if you were standing up downstage where a conductor would stand, then you would hear the effect of the reflections from that curved back wall. It's a tricky thing to set up a band in a place like that without treating the back wall with. I've seen venues have portable sound absorption panels to put up in front of the wall to kill that effect. But short of that, also don't know if there is amplification in this venue that could be affecting what's being heard on stage. So more information would be needed to really, really help you.
Good, Mickey?
Yeah, this to me sounds like either a house of worship, like a cathedral, or an amphitheater, because these types of venues are actually designed, and the architects really designed it so that unamplified voices can travel throughout the whole venue, and the reverberation actually arrives at the far end clear enough for people to understand what's being said. There's been a trend over the past decade or so of these types of venues either being designed from the get-go or retrofitted so that they no longer have that factor in it wherein it reverberates the sound throughout the entire venue, and it makes both broadcast sound and also amplified sound a lot easier to deal with in those types of spaces. So if this is an existing space, perhaps retrofitting it with some treatment of the venue, sound treatment. There are a lot of houses of worship now that place a lot of sound absorption panels throughout the venue, or even sealing up or treating the domed ceiling so that the reverberation, the delays are a lot more controlled. So perhaps it's something to consider.
Do you think something like a Myers constellation would fill in some of those opportunities? Or
I don't think, and Marty might be able to speak to this more than I could, but I don't think like specifically a constellation system, but perhaps having more loudspeakers that with each of them pushing out less SPL would provide a better transmission of sound rather than a single pair or less number of speakers each pushing out a lot of air.
Yeah. There's the two examples that I think about. There's one facility I don't think I can talk about too much, but that had their version of a Myers constellation with about 180 mics, that are in the space, and it sounds reverberant when you're there. But if they turn it off, it just sucks your ears out. Like there's nothing there. Like it's completely, but they can amplify kind of anybody who's sitting anywhere in the theater. The other one is that Pac-12 used to have, they had all these lights, and in those lights they had all these microphones, and so it just looked like a room that had just lights across the top, but it was for press conferences and people could just stand up and talk. I don't know if it would work with a band, but it did feel like no one needed a mic. It was but it got back to what Mickey was talking about, a very, very low SPL. For everything. So everything is at a very low level at any one place. Go ahead, Marty.
So reverberant spaces in general are always a real challenge. And the typical or traditional methods to work in those spaces and provide good amplification that makes speech intelligible and music musical is, people have tried many things: distributed loudspeakers, or smaller speakers distributed throughout the space and playing them at a lower level. That's one method. Line arrays that have a very narrow vertical dispersion angle is another method that people have tried to use. But there is all of these have their drawbacks because they are producing correlated high-intensity sound even at a low level, and these things, this kind of sound waves easily reflect off of surfaces. And so it doesn't really help to reduce the reverberation in the space. It just puts loudspeakers closer to the audience so that they can hear them clearer. But there is one type of loudspeaker known as a distributed mode loudspeaker. It's marketed by a company called Flat Panel Audio. And this type of speaker works completely differently than anything else on the market. It produces a diffuse, uncorrelated sound that doesn't reflect off of surfaces the same way as regular speakers do. They don't suffer from the problem of destructive interference that's caused by the combination of direct sound from a speaker and reflected sound from the same speaker, because of the time delays. When they combine, they cancel out at certain frequencies and produce a comb filter effect. This kind of loudspeaker produces a very diffuse sound, and it actually is reinforced by reflections and reverberations in the room. And the effect is that it is incredibly intelligible in a reverberant space. It's a new technology that's being put out. It's not very new. It's been around for a number of years. But the company that is now producing it and marketing it is making it more available to people. So it's something to look out for.
Good, Mickey.
And yeah, like going back to what I was mentioning earlier about having more loudspeakers at lower SPLs, and the goal with that is to provide more direct sound from the loudspeakers to the audience's ears, rather than having more reflected sound hitting their ears. So putting smaller speakers, like a lot more delayed speakers that shoot directly into their ears, would give less of perception of, or give a lot more clarity in terms of the speech or the sound that they're hearing.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. He says, does the MixPre 3 record the audio locally to the SD card any differently than what the computer is getting or using it if you're using it as a USB audio interface? Gain, NoiseAssist, etc.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. Just bear in mind that the ISO recordings on the SD card will always be pre-fader recordings.
Unless you're recording left, right, and so a lot of times,
unless you record a mix bus, yeah. Mm-hmm. But the ISO tracks that are recorded on the SD cards will always be pre-fader. So if you are sending pre-fader out, because that's fully routable at the MixPre, what you send out of the multiple USB channels going out of the MixPre into the computer is fully selectable. So if you also send pre-fader out of those USB channels, then they will match exactly in terms of the ISOs that you get on the SD card.
Go, Jesse.
I would be kind of careful with this and actually do some deeper level testing. I'm going to show you some spectral frequency analysis we did on the L20, and when we were recording at the L20 level, it was all fine. What you're seeing here is 50, 100, I think 1,000, 2,000, all the way up to 10,000. And what we found was that when we transported over USB up in the very high frequencies, we were getting a lot of this kind of echoey banding. So build out a sound file that's got 10 seconds of each frequency, record it at your MixPre level, and also record it at the computer after traveling through USB, and take a look at what kind of echoing appears, and you might be surprised with what you see. I haven't tested the MixPre, but that's how poorly the L20 performed over USB.
What is an L20?
It's the Zooms console mixing board with ISO records on it.
Yeah, I think that their processing might be a lot different than the MixPre, so it would be useful to test that. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one comes in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. He says, has anyone set up an RTMP Miniserver? And he has a link to one.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, actually, I set one up about a year and a half ago when I still had a fiber connection. They work fairly well. It really depends on what you're going to be doing with them. The one thing that I liked about this was the fact you could build yourself a mini server, and they're showing things like connecting up GoPros and drones and things like that. And the best part about that is you could actually take that to the place that you're actually using the drones or the GoPros, and then set up a network as best as you can within that area. So you could then have those RTMP into the computer. You're still going to have problems, connection problems as you go, even in that. Doing more wide angle thing, the biggest thing to worry about is bandwidth. So like if you have a camera in New York and you're trying to record whatever and send it back to the studio, then you have to worry about how that signal is being sent from point A to point B. And usually having something with backup, maybe a secondary connection, maybe a bonded connection, would be the better thing to do. That way you have the best possible chance, but it's most likely going to freeze at some point, even for a second. So you trying to get the perfectness is not going to be there. And then, of course, if you're talking, you need something that needs more encryption, then you need to start looking at something like SRT over RTMP.
Yeah, and I think that the great thing about RTMP, as Jeffrey laid out, is that it's ubiquitous. Lots and lots of things will do RTMP, and so getting that into the cloud and then into NDI streams, I think or into wherever you need to get it to, is important. And as stated before, I think sync is the big issue. Make sure that this is just a separate feed, and you're not trying to do multiple cameras. Next question.
Next one comes in from Andre Delay in Berlin, Germany. He says, how many backups of live AV recordings are you preparing for an event, and in which way? We lost our main and backup recording of one language due to routing issue and not enough time to reliably test.
Go, Jesse.
We run 2 of any given feed, and at minimum 2, average or more commonly around 4. And this is, we lean into 3.5 millimeter. I know it takes a lot of heat on this show, but we'd rather have a 3.5 millimeter feed going into a little, handy recorder and have a 4th backup than not have that on hand.
Good, Marty.
So I think that a multi-track recording that comes right off of the preamps of your mixing console is about as direct as you're going to get without worrying about broadcast routing and routing to external, number of external recorders. The backups are great. They're necessary. You should have them. Multi-track recording is about as direct as you can get, though.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. It says, how dependable would the MLive B-Beat Pro 16 be versus a laptop in a live show? And he has a link to it.
Go, Jeffrey.
When this first came out, I was very impressed. They have a smaller version that you can use. And basically what this is, for people that don't know, is you can attach certain things, have stems put into the box, and be able to, so like let's say 1 gig you're playing a guitar, and the next gig you're playing piano. You can actually take out the guitar parts and play guitar parts. You can switch it around, play the piano, vice versa. It also has the screen ability, so you can turn around and have like lyrics on screen or video on screen or anything like that. So the question of whether it would be more reliable on a Windows machine versus a computer versus the box itself, I always like the idea that you can have something separate to the computer, because the computer can do so much more, and it doesn't, if a Facebook alert or an email shows up, it doesn't ding onto your system, and as opposed to this thing where it's very dedicated to doing one thing and one thing only. And the other thing is it does connect up to a Windows or a Mac with their software, so you can manage this box, so you can have a computer nearby. So I like the idea of keeping this the hardware separate from the software, so you can do what you need to do, and if anything freezes up, because it will freeze up, it's a computer. And if anything freezes up on the Windows side, you still have the Beatbox. If it freezes up on the Beatbox, yeah, you'll definitely have to restart something. But I feel you'll have less chance of that happening on dedicated hardware.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting box. I looked at it, I was like, I can't see myself using it. Because the laptops are so good at what they do related to this at this point. But I think that it'd be interesting if someone really wants just a piece of hardware and they don't want to think about opening up any screens or opening up the screens that way. Next question.
Next one comes in from New York City. David Brady says, we have a number of web presenters from Blackmagic, I guess, in use, but have a bad taste after cache backlog and stream failure. What are some alternative high to mid-tier hardware encoders that the panel prefers, and why?
Go ahead, Jesse.
I don't have any recommendations for web presenters. What I'll say, though, is that it sounds like it might be a connection problem. We've had this before when the cache overloads and then the stream fails, and it usually is fixed by generating a new stream key and resetting all the gear and resetting the streaming platform. And whatever you end up buying to replace the old stuff, test it a lot before you go out to the field with it, because this problem might not show up the first 5, 10, 15, 20 times you do a stream. So good luck.
Yeah, we're using a talent here to do the encoding. Osprey makes the talent, which we're using here. It works fairly well. And we've used in a variety of other ones to look at are Videon. Videon makes a wide variety of ones, and some of them have both encoders and decoders. And those can be, and they're a very, cost-effective and very powerful solution. High Vision obviously makes a variety of tools that do this fairly well. The one that I'm testing right now that I had planned to test just point to point, and then when I opened it, I realized that it does kind of everything, is the Teradek Prisms. So we're testing Prisms point to point from Michigan to here, and they have all the tools to do that as well at very high levels. So those are, and these are kind of in the, again, I would call them mid-tier. As you really get into high end, you're talking, I would say that you're primarily talking about ATEMs, it's ATEME, and elementals. So elemental appliances. So these are the high end of the elemental appliances are currently, I think, the 900s, and those are going to set you back about $150,000. so that's the high end, and those are, I believe, those are 2110 capable. I used to own 600s and 700s, which were pretty expensive when we bought them. And then lots and lots of these, what we called 023s, which were in the $15,000 range and would let you do, a couple encodes at a time. But it's gotten a lot easier and a lot less expensive. I mean, you can definitely do this with a lot of these smaller encoders. For a lot of events, I will use the Media Live, the Elemental links. There's a UHD version and a regular version, and those links are really, really simple to administer. So if you're able to go to AWS, those are really nice. You just plug them in, and you get to them on AWS and control them from there. And you're able to pull in a very high-quality stream and then start distributing it where you want it to go. So that's another one thing to look at. But if you're looking at something more direct, the ones that I would tend to lean towards would be the Osprey Talents or the Videon solutions. Those are the ones that we've used the most for smaller kind of appliance level encoding. One thing that I am looking at pretty seriously is what software can I use for the new Mac Mini M4 that is just an encode. I don't have a picture of a perfect piece of software yet. I'm going to look at Colleen Henry's Streamline, but I'm going to look at a bunch of things of like, what can we put on that little box? Because it has plenty of power to do very, very high quality streams. It's just a matter of someone giving us an interface that's easy. We could currently just use FFmpeg and do that, but I'd like to see someone put something together that did a pretty good job of that, and we'll see if that actually happens. Next question.
Next one comes in from some new user here in Novato, California, named Alex Lindsay. He says at a small venue, they have a Midas 32 mixer that is full with only a USB card, no Dante. What would I need to bring to get 32 channels separately from the stage for a completely separate mix?
And to kind of set this up, this is a small venue that's near where I live, and I'd like to do some more stuff there. I had a good conversation with them yesterday. And, they have, if you think about the venue here, it'll hold about 100 people. And they have a small sound booth here, and then they have the stage here. Now, they have a lot of routing that goes in and out of the stage up front. They have the mixer here, and they usually record to a laptop that's right there. That's what they're using the USB card for. And so what I'm looking at is what would it take if I wanted to share all the signals up here with them. So they can do their mix for the house, and I can do a mix for whatever else I want. So they are recording all the tracks. So, that's fine. But what I'd like to do is for web and potentially do some surround, how would I get those signals and reliably give it back to them? Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
So the Behringer stage boxes, or the Midas stage boxes, have two AES-50 ports on them, And so if you're using an M32 or an X32 console, you can tap right into that at the stage box and share the preamp outputs on the stage box. Alternatively, you could also tap into the AES-50 at their mixing console, which also has 2 ports. And then the routing can go through the console right from the preamp.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And you can get digital trims so that if they make a preamp adjustment, it won't necessarily affect the feed to you either.
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, well, just like what Marty said, you can get the stage boxes from either Midas or Behringer. Both of them support ES50 on their stage boxes. Like this is one of them. You can get 2 of these. The DL32 has 16 outs.
And what do you think of the preamps in those stage boxes?
I personally have not used the Midas ones, and I also don't use the Behringer ones much. Generally, I prefer other brands and trust other brands more. But supposedly the Midas ones are a little cleaner. But what I would say though is, if you need to create a new mix, I would rather do the split at the stage directly off the mics rather than routing through someone else's board, splitting out of their board. I'd rather have a split at as close to the source as possible.
So you'd have a stage box, and the stage box would just supply both mixers.
Yeah, so you can do an analog split directly from the mics, with one of them, either the one feeding you the broadcast or the output feeding front of house, or the monitor console being isolated from each other. Or if they are using some sort of stage box, then you can take a split off of there rather than from someone else's board. That may, if they adjust their gain, that means that it would also adjust the gain that you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
So having isolated feeds are usually preferred for the feeds that are being split off.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, so the Midas preamps are definitely better than the Behringer preamps. They're a bit cleaner, a little bit less noise. I think it was Dave Ratt did a video that actually compared the Midas preamps to the Behringer preamps, and it was a little surprising what he found. So actually, depending on where you're physically going to be, if you're going to be closer to the stage, then definitely take the AES-50 B port from the stage box to your console. If you're going to be closer to the house console, then you can do it there. And in the routing of the Midas board, the house board, you can route the AES-50 that's coming in from the stage box directly out without going through their preamps. However, you do want to set the house board so that it's set for digital trim and not for direct control over the preamps. And that way, each board can have their own control that's separate in terms of preamp gain. And you won't be going actually through any of the electronics on the board except to route the incoming AES-50 signals to the outgoing AES-50.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Ben in Singapore. He says, what are some best practices for redundancy when the computer running vMix crashes during a show? I was told to run another instance of vMix on a second computer concurrently, but it's expensive backup for a small budget setup. What are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Is it more expensive than failure?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So you could definitely do something like to have a redundant thing. For example, my PTZ cameras can do NDI, and then they can also do HDMI or SDI. I believe they actually can do all three at the same time. So I could have a machine set up that's doing nothing but capturing the HDMI feeds. I have a machine that can do nothing but capture the NDI feeds. I could actually have two computers doing the NDI feeds if I wanted to. So you don't need to use vMix. There are other alternatives, and it really depends on the situation. If you're really strapped for cash and you're really concerned that your vMix is going to crash, then first of all, fix your vMix, fix the computer that's on. But if you need to do something, you want to do some sort of backup, what I would highly suggest is figure out what your best cameras, your most important cameras, and most important, possibly even graphics are on there, and then duplicate that on a machine using not vMix, but OBS. You can definitely bring it in via HDMI. You can also bring it in via NDI. So that way when that vMix goes down, because your vMix will then be sending it out to another box that's going to be sending out somewhere Streamwise or recording it. So if that does fail, you could switch over to the other box fairly quickly and have your basic cameras while you fix your vMix, and then at the right time you can switch back.
Good, Mickey.
Absolutely agree with what Jesse mentioned. What Jesse said, like how expensive is failure for you in the productions that you do, and also want to mention that this is where a cloud solution. I'm assuming you're running an on-prem computer for vMix. If you go to the cloud, spinning up another instance is extremely affordable. You're spreading out the expense, throughout your usage as opposed to a single large capital expenditure. But this gives you the flexibility to say, like, oh, for this production, I may need 16 machines. It's nothing if you're doing it in the cloud, as opposed to having to actually bring or purchase 16 computers locally.
Yeah, a lot of times, just to get to an inexpensive solution for this, a lot of times, no matter what kind of switchers I have, I often have I literally will throw an extreme into my bag, mini extreme ISO in my bag, as that it's not going to be the same show, but I can still cut cameras, and still add some basic graphics to it. It depends on how many sources you have. I have a little SDI one that I just throw in, and I ended up using it for a show recently because we found that the switcher that we had wasn't going to do what we needed to do. And so we were able to, again, it wasn't my choice, but if you're looking for something that's not a whole nother computer, then you may want to look at something like that, especially if you have to be on site. There are definitely times like where I was working, we couldn't have put it in the cloud because the just bandwidth and so on and so forth. So I can see where you might need to be on site to do those things, but you would, oftentimes these little ATEMs can be good little backups for something that is more robust, but you have a way at least to get back to it that isn't a whole nother computer. Quick reminder that we have other shows other than this show. We have the Rundown that's at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursdays, and we have extra hours on Mondays. We didn't have it this last week, but we will have it next week. Extra hours at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Those are for our evening listeners and our overseas listeners. We've kind of shifted the thing almost 12 hours so that people can be part of that conversation as well. If you've got more questions, of course, you can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and we will try to get it in today or tomorrow. Next question.
Next question comes in from Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona. He says the Kondor Blue iPhone 15 or 16 USB-C Media Hub is finally shipping after what feels like a year. Anyone still excited? He says his is en route.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, I just muted myself instead of unmuting myself. I'm not too excited because I don't have an iPhone 16, but I thought I'd give you a look at it. It looks like it takes, you run your power into it, and it provides a monitor out, a media out for recording, and audio in, and through power for your iPhone. So it looks pretty interesting. I'm sure you'd probably have to, I don't think it'll run off the phone's interior power, but you probably have to keep your power supply plugged in to power all of that. It looks interesting.
Go, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a passive dock for that. So I've built many a different portable rigs, and one we used at NAB in 2023, and it's a challenge sometimes. And the one advantage that it does have is the 1/4-inch screw option, as opposed to trying to zip tie it to a cage of some sort, which is what I did with the regular docks. Other than that, I don't see this any different than any other dock that is being sold out there. I don't know what the electronics are. There are no reviews of this. Nobody's gotten a pre-review, and I don't remember it being at NAB this year, and it doesn't mean much because it could have been there. I just didn't see it in the Kondor Blue booth. But the whole point is that it's give it a try, and just report back to us, I suppose, and see what you think about it. But it definitely is some way to expand on your iPhone 15 or 16, and I'm guessing you'll also be able to use it with an Android device.
Yeah, this is what it replaces, or what it's about to replace on my rig. Now that Jack has mentioned it again, I kind of forgotten about it because it hadn't been shipping. I was like, oh, I'm really excited, and then nothing happened. And so now that Jack brought that back up and now it's shipping, I'm going to absolutely order one. Here's the issue: is that I'm giving up this clamp, and I'm very limited of where I can put this because of the structure of it. And this is the only other one that I found that really works. This is the Belkin version, which is probably about half the cost, but it is the convenience of this one. I mean, this is what you kind of feel like, if they were able to, my challenge yesterday is now I just need them to do this. Like that. so some kind of audio interface that's mountable, that is a simple audio interface that's mountable would be kind of amazing. But that would solve a bunch of problems because I'm kind of working around both of those issues. Next question.
Next one comes in from a guy named Alex Lindsay in Novato, California. He says, I used my Apple AirPods as earplugs last night at a show, and I have a report.
Yeah, I thought, we've been talking about this. Apple's been talking about you can protect your ears with the AirPods. And so I was like, well, let's give this a shot. And the answer is you can absolutely protect them with your ear. It's definitely much lower there. And it is not the same muffledness as it is not the same muffledness that you get if you just put regular earplugs in. And it felt like, I don't know what it was, but it sure felt like -25. Like it really brought things down. The challenge really is that it's over-modulating on bass. So hard drum hits appear to have it go, and so it's doing something that isn't great. The other thing is that it has the way it's processing it, it's bringing it down, but it's also getting rid of a lot of the atmospheric sound, the reverberance of the space and everything else. And so it's kind of like if you listen to the guitars without a lot of without a lot of the effects, and you listen to the mic without as much fullness. I don't know if it worked. I guess I would say, like, I was kind of like it's getting there, but the processing didn't give me the feeling like I'm there enjoying it, and it's just a little lower. It was actually separating the elements out a lot more than you would normally hear. And I did measure it and found out that the space that I was in, I was testing it, and the space was in it turned out it was, it's a show for high school students that are in rock bands. My daughter's in 2 of them. And I think that they kept it pretty protected. So it wasn't over 85 dB. So I just took them out. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So when I had Bell's palsy, the first time I had Bell's palsy, there were no AirPods. The second time when I had Bell's palsy, I used the AirPods Pro when I had to go out and watch bands, go out to the bar scene, and it was definitely a savior because with Bell's palsy, basically, for those that don't know, one side of your face just doesn't work. No, the muscles don't work, and there's muscles in the ear. So if you don't have ear protection in, it sounds like somebody's drilling something in the side of your head. So, and of course with regular earplugs, they'll do up to 20 decibels. But with these, the best part about them is not only could I put on the noise cancellation, I could put it in transparent mode. So if I was in the venue, I could have it totally noise canceled. If I was walking out and I was talking to somebody somebody in a more general area, I could put it into transparent mode so I can hear them a little bit better, and then go back and forth. And even just having that AirPod Pro in one ear and listening with your regular ear was really a savior for me if I really needed to hear some sort of frequency that wasn't jiving in the club.
Go ahead, Marty.
So it sounds like it's using active noise cancellation, and the question I have is it adjustable? Because if it's trying to cancel out all of the sounds to give you a quiet environment so that you can, say, sleep on an airplane, then it's not really giving you a sense of it's not doing the same thing as musicians' earplugs would do, which is to reduce all of the sounds by a certain number of dB, but not totally, and to do it in proportion of the natural hearing curve, so that it's supposed to sound natural but at a lower level.
Next question.
From New York City, David Brady asked, is Zoom's RTMP Ingest only available to Zoom events webinars, or can it be configured for the OG webinars?
I think that it's only events, and I am not 100% sure. Hold on, let me see if we have any friends that are watching here that will give us some information. Nope, it has nothing to do with events. It's a developer framework. Nope, it's not connected to that. So you should be it should be possible. But yeah, hold on. There's typing going on in the background. We're just gonna, it's RTMP. Hold on a second. We're just gonna hold this for a second. We're just
breaking news.
Breaking news
just now.
Yeah, it's events webinars only at the moment. Next question.
Next one comes in from Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona. He says, help me understand what I'm doing wrong. Lapel mics on documentary interviews, when isolated, sound great, but mixed together, digital phase sounds. I prefer recording with my shotgun mic, but it was too far in this instance. How can I fix phasing?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, that's pretty natural for that to happen. You have a single, say if you have a single person speaking with two mics open in the room, you would have that single source of sound hitting the two microphones at different points in time. So, and that is why you get phasing. You'll have, imagine a waveform like mic number one will receive the sound while the waveform is going up, and then mic number two, for example, might get the sound with the waveform going down. And when you sum those two together, that's how you get the phasey sound, wherein certain frequencies are canceled because of the summing of those two signals that aren't time aligned. You mentioned this is a documentary. One thing you will have to go through at the end of the documentary process is the post sound process, and with that, one of the first steps in the post sound process is dialogue editing. When you or your post sound team goes through the dialogue editing process, you'll go through what's called checkerboarding, wherein this is a corporate video, but it's the same deal with documentaries, wherein you'll take each person and only use the microphone in the cut. Only use a microphone that's actually has speech in it during the cut, and you'll cut between the different people speaking. This one has been fully dialogue edited, so every single pop and click has been cleaned up. That's why there are like thousands of little cuts in this timeline here. But this is what you're going to have to go through, and go through it and checkerboard it. Each person, different mixers have different re-recording mixers have their own style. So they would ask their dialogue editor, I want it cut this way. My preference for this is each person has their own dialogue track. And this is a fully checkerboarded dialogue edit here, wherein that person's mic is only there on that track when there's an actual signal that we want to hear. Aside from this, if there are actual instances that you need to mix different sources together at the same time and you end up with that phasey sound, there are plugins such as Auto Align Post that is really useful. With Auto Align Post, you'd select a region or a clip. I'm talking in terms of in using Pro Tools terms here. You would select a clip that will act as your reference, and then you'll have the plugin read that reference and then select the clip that you want to time align to that reference, and it will process it so that it no longer sounds phasey. And that's really handy in situations wherein, like you mentioned, the boom might be a little too far, so you maybe want to use the lav as your primary and then just fill in a little boom in there just to give it some space and some air and some more natural sound, or vice versa. So I use Auto Line Post for that. But hearing phasiness with lavaliers, multiple mics in general, is pretty normal.
Good, Marty.
Yeah. So as Mickey is saying, phase equals time, or time is phase. And what you're hearing is the difference in arrival time between the close microphone and the farther microphone. And there are a couple of ways to deal with this. If this is a live broadcast, then I would want to use a mixer that has an auto mixing function in it, which would automatically reduce the gain of the microphone that's not being used at the moment. And so only the active speaker will be up in the mix, and that will reduce the phasing sound because only one microphone is essentially on at the time. When you're recording, though, and assuming that you're recording to separate tracks, each microphone to a separate track, and also that you're recording ambient noise that can fill in for when post-production does do that checkerboarding, which is muting microphones that are not actively being used. So if person one is speaking, typically the track for person two would be muted. It would be muted in the track, and that's part of the post-production process, as Mickey was showing us, called checkerboarding. And as that's going back and forth between the multiple people, the ambient sound noise of the room would fill in so that that switching is not so apparent. But auto mixing is a very, very useful thing to have in a field mixer and even in a live mixer.
Good, Mickey.
And yeah, definitely, like, auto mixing in a live situation is very useful. It's also useful in very, very fast turnaround productions. Like, even though it's going through post-production, it will, something shot this afternoon will be aired tonight. Like, for example, with news, or in live broadcasts, of course. But something like a documentary or most other unscripted programming, it will go through a post-production process almost all the time, especially if you're aiming for distribution, like proper distribution, either through some sort of OTT service or perhaps going through a festival run. You'll have to go through a post sound process for that, which does include dialogue editing and everything else.
Next question.
From Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany, Ike asked thoughts on the APC-R Mini from Middle Things that helps transform a camera-equipped DJI Gimbal into a PTZ camera to be controlled by a joystick. And here's a link to that. Looks like an interesting thing.
Pretty interesting. So this is what it looks like here. So you have the APC Mini here. And so what you can do is this, from looking at this, is primarily it looks like it's really aimed at the ATEM switchers but you can have as it's applied here, it can work with the DJI, but it also has this ability to tie in. You can see here it's attached directly to one of the cameras so that you can do your shading and so on and so forth. And that is one of the big challenges we get into, is how do I handle some of the color control of a Blackmagic camera when I'm how do I handle that when they're wireless, when they're on a wireless rig? And this looks like it could be one of the things. $490, so it's not free. But it does look like it could be really powerful, especially if we were doing kind of wireless solutions. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and it also ties into, it supports BitFocus Companion, so you could do a bunch of presets. If you do a regular show over and over again, you could preset your camera framing and just go to preset number 3, preset number 4, over the shoulder, et cetera, using BitFocus.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney. Not Courtney, Jeffrey.
That was me.
yeah, exactly, Jeffrey.
The one thing that I'm looking at, it looks kind of like some of the UVC to NDI devices that I have, and I'm really concerned that it might be a UVC device that's sending, or is it just controlling the camera?
It's got its own, middle thing's got their own platform. They're not using.
Okay.
It's not a
so
UVC
it's not sending video through that. So that was my only concern on that. But there's probably just some software that you would run on that. So it looks good to me. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I definitely want to play with that. So thanks for everyone for watching for our Q&A. Reminder that you can buy shirts at officehours.global/shop. And we had some questions. We don't have an international solution right now. Our recommendation is to buddy up, find someone in the U.S. that can buy it and then send it to you. We just couldn't find a solution. The folks that are making the shirts for us, what they were going to charge for going international was going to be not something we could afford, or not something you could afford. But buddy up with folks here. It's a community operation, and we'll figure that out in the future. But again, you can go to officehours.global/shop. If you want to just donate, that helps support us buying the shirts, and you end up with a shirt. If you'd like to support us just directly, you can go to officehours.global/donate and just donate directly. We are a 501c3. And thanks so much. I appreciate all the questions. There's a lot of great questions today. This is our audio day, and we had a lot of great audio questions in the conversation. And thanks if you're still watching on some of the other channels. If you got to the end of this, you can remember that we'll be doing this occasionally, but you can also just go to officehours.global and or Office Hours Global on YouTube and subscribe there as well. Thanks to everyone watching, the producers asking the great questions. Thanks to the panelists. Can't do this without you. And thanks to the incredible dev team and management teams that make this possible every single day, 7 days a week since March 25th, 2020. So it's kind of amazing. We traveled today. If we'd done this in person, the Tlaloc Traversal, we traveled 57,000 miles. That's 92,000 kilometers. And that is 453 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. That was good.
Yeah. You'll have to find a T-shirt manufacturer in Europe, in the EU, who can just.
We just had to find one that's more global. We're gonna figure it out. I think I was picky about the shirts, but being picky about the shirts meant that we didn't have as much global coverage. I think we're gonna do something different that maybe is more generalized. So, but I don't know when that will happen. So if people want shirts now, they should probably get them, because it might take me another 3 or 4 months to get there. Or more. It took 4 years to get to here. So, all right. So anyway, all right. Thanks so much. Great work, guys.
Bye-bye.